In November of 1992, 6-year-old Ricky Tokarz was forced to witness something no child should ever have to see. That moment would mark him forever, and turn his innocent testimony into the key to unlocking one of the most shocking crimes in recent U.S. history. Ricky's mother, Sarah Tokarz, was the wife of a well-connected attorney, but she carried a dangerous secret. A secret she didn't even know would ultimately seal her fate. Worst of all, the betrayal that led to her tragic end came from the last person she ever would have suspected. This is the case of Sarah Tokarz. 3 times a week on this channel, we bring you the crimes that shook the world. Disappearances, murders, corruption, and injustice, these are the stories that demand to be told. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and leave a like so we can continue creating this content for you. Now let's examine every detail of this chilling case. Sarah Ambrusco Tokarz was born on June 28, 1953, in a suburb of New York. She was one of 4 daughters raised by Phyllis and John Ambrusco. Her father, a respected physician, provided his girls with a stable and loving home. Sarah was known for her vibrant personality and natural charm. In high school, she was a cheerleader, and her lively spirit made her instantly memorable. As an adult, she earned a degree in elementary education and later worked as a teacher in Florida. After a brief marriage that ended in divorce, she moved to Atlanta and took a job as a marketing director for a popular nightclub. Stylish, outgoing, and full of energy, Sarah was 31 years old and still dreaming of building her own family. One night, she saw a young attorney named Fred Tokarz on television. He was confident, ambitious, exactly the kind of man she imagined marrying. On an impulse, she called him. The conversation flowed naturally, the connection was instant, and soon they were dating. A year later, they married in a small civil ceremony. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, happy, driven, and ready to start a future together. But beneath the surface, the cracks were already starting to form. Not long after the wedding, Sarah noticed troubling signs. Fred wasn't as attentive as she expected, but she was determined to make her marriage work. When she became pregnant in 1986 with her first child, Ricky, she hoped things would improve. She wanted to leave her job after the baby was born, but Fred refused. He insisted she continue working, and when she later lost her job due to the declining nightclub industry, he took full control of the family's finances. Fred put Sarah on allowance, forced her to deal only in cash, and prohibited her from opening her own bank account. He refused to buy furniture or fix problems in their home. He also kept a locked safe in the basement and forbade her from ever entering that area. In an attempt to regain some independence, Sarah secretly opened credit cards, but the mounting debt only made things worse. Her fashionable outfits were replaced with second-hand clothes borrowed from her sister. Fred also began isolating her from her family. Whenever she wanted to visit them in Florida, he'd come up with excuses or simply refuse to give her money for gas. When he did join her, he would fly while she made the 9-hour drive alone with the baby. In 1988, Sarah gave birth to their second son, Michael. But Fred grew even more distant, preoccupied with politics, new business dealings, and what Sarah suspected was an affair. Fearing for her safety and worried about losing custody of her children, she hired a private investigator. The PI confirmed Fred's affair, but even then, Sarah didn't feel secure enough to leave him. Fred had threatened her with a nasty custody battle, one she knew he could win, given his political connections. She became anxious and jumpy. She asked Fred several times to install an alarm system, since she was often home alone with the children. He refused. He also wouldn't repair their broken sliding glass door. But even with fear weighing heavily on her, Sarah tried to reclaim her life. She volunteered at her children's school, continued visiting her family, and even spoke about returning to work full-time. She had no idea her time was running out. On the night of November 29, 1992, Sarah and her sons returned home from a Thanksgiving trip to Florida. As they entered the house, an armed intruder confronted them. He forced Sarah and the boys back into their vehicle. Just a mile from their home, he fired a single shot into the back of Sarah's head and fled into the darkness. 6-year-old Ricky, terrified but incredibly brave, leaned over his mother's body to turn off the car's ignition. He woke up his younger brother, Michael, took his hand, and ran for help. At a nearby home, the two little boys appeared on the doorstep, covered in blood. Ricky begged the homeowner to call his grandfather, believing with heartbreaking innocence that a doctor could still save his mom. When neighbors went to check the vehicle, Sarah's lifeless body fell out of the driver's seat. She had been murdered, execution style. The investigation began immediately. Fred was notified while staying at a hotel in Alabama. When detectives arrived, they found him grieving, but they also smelled alcohol on his breath. He claimed his lawyer had advised him to drink to calm his nerves. He gave vague answers about home security and seemed oddly uninvolved in the investigation. He refused to walk officers through the home and couldn't explain why the safe in the basement was now open. He claimed nothing was missing except for a guitar that had just been moved. Initially, investigators suspected a botched robbery or a kidnapping linked to one of Fred's clients. They also relied heavily on Ricky's description of the attacker, a thin man wearing a knit hat, but the resulting sketch was too generic to produce any solid leads. Then everything changed. Police received a tip naming Curtis Rower, a 22-year-old man with a crack addiction. He had reportedly been boasting around town about killing a woman for money. A second man, Eddie Lawrence, a business associate of Fred's, was also mentioned. Eddie denied any involvement, but Curtis eventually confessed after being arrested on December 23. He told police that Eddie had offered him $5,000 to kill a white woman who was getting in the way of his business. He also claimed Eddie had pointed out the broken sliding door and provided instructions. Both men were arrested and charged with murder, but the truth ran even deeper. Just one day after Curtis's arrest, Fred attempted suicide in a Florida hotel room. He had left his children with Sarah's family and retreated to his mother's home. With the net closing in, Eddie Lawrence finally agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. He admitted that Fred had offered him $25,000 and a nearly $1 million investment to arrange his wife's murder. Curtis later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life without parole. And at his trial, 6-year-old Ricky bravely took the stand to testify against him. Now, investigators finally had a full picture of the truth. According to prosecutors, Fred had approached Eddie during the summer of 1992 and asked if he was willing to kill someone. That someone was Sarah. Fred didn't want a divorce. He didn't want to share his assets. He just wanted her gone and he wanted the payout. What Sarah had discovered in that locked safe explained everything. Fred was deeply involved in drug trafficking, money laundering, and violent criminal networks operating across Atlanta, Detroit, Miami, and Los Angeles. She had gathered documents and given them to her private investigator, warning him that if anything ever happened to her, he should turn them over to the police. Meanwhile, Fred had secretly taken out 3 life insurance policies on Sarah, totaling nearly $2 million, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. Fred was first convicted in federal court of racketeering, conspiracy, and using a telephone to arrange a murder. He received 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Then, during his state trial in 1997, which was broadcast live, he was found guilty of murdering his wife. Although the jury agreed the case met the criteria for the death penalty, they chose to sentence him to life in prison instead. When he heard he wouldn't be executed, Fred whispered just one word: "Mom." In the aftermath, Sarah's family raised Ricky and Michael with love and protection. As adults, both brothers chose different paths. One became open about his past, while the other remained more private. Fred remains in prison, where he has reportedly provided information on several other crimes, helping to solve multiple cases. Even behind bars, his legal mind continues to influence investigations. But the legacy of Sarah's murder lives on. A family was destroyed, a mother was betrayed, and 2 little boys had their lives changed forever on a cold November night. Thanks for watching.